The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today we're going to be talking about debates for the 2024 election season. How many debates will there be? What networks might they be on? Will there be a vice presidential debate? What maybe the strategies of debates are going to be for both of the candidates? And actually, who's going to show up? We're also going to be talking a little bit about what needs to happen if Donald Trump was to lose the election to assist the Republican Party in reimagining themselves and coming back more into the mainstream. So we hope you'll join us. Let's listen in.
What about these debates? Now, as Scott and I were talking before we started, now apparently there are potentially 3 presidential debates coming. And I don't know anything about a Vance-Walz debate. The last I had seen, Vance was talking about debating Harris, which doesn't make any sense at all.
Anymore. It did at the time.
Anymore.
It doesn't make sense anymore, right? Yeah.
No, I was seeing that this morning, where Vance was talking about debating Harris, which doesn't make any sense to me, and I didn't have time to listen to the news aspect, but he, I think it was MSNBC. They were talking about Vance wanting to debate Harris.
All right, well,
and I thought, no, he should be wanting to debate Walz.
Yeah.
So what do we think about all this?
Maybe all his opposition research that he's already done was about Harris, and he doesn't want to have to. He doesn't want to have to go back and do it all over again. I really don't know, but he's going to have to debate Walz, and I think that will happen. I don't think there are going to be 3 debates. We'd be lucky to see one. I think Biden and Trump jousted twice. I would say that would be the max this time around. I guess if Trump is losing, maybe he changes his mind about that. But I don't see him. People are talking just as much, I think, about him quiet quitting this thing and just kind of, that if it's not working out for him, he's just going to sort of walk away from it and he go back to living his great life and golfing in Mar-a-Lago and stuff like that, at least until the legal system catches up to him. Which, if he's not president, it will.
Yeah. And all right, for the debates, I'm going to say, well, the 4th or the one on ABC, by all reports, is going to go on. The question is will Trump actually show up to it? He's agreed to it. So will he show up? The other 2, Harris has not agreed to yet. Trump wants them, of course. I would say if Harris was smart, and I think that her team is pretty smart, they'd say, okay, we'll do the NBC one, but we're not going to do the Fox one. We're not going to go on to Fox. And, let them run with it any way they want to run with it. Who cares? But as far as a debate between the 2 vice presidential candidates, I can see it happening once. But it's just as Scott said, there's still a lot of time left. I think there's 89 days or 88 days before the election. And we all have to remember, one-off shit takes care of a whole bunch of attaboys. They have done this rollout very, very well. Now they have to make sure that they don't misstep, because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take a lot for a misstep to hit. But I think, after this is over and done with, and thankfully it will be eventually, I think then the responsibility turns to the media. If Trump loses, and hopefully he does, don't give him any more oxygen. just take him, do not give him any more oxygen. He thrives on the attention. Saying that his crowd was bigger than Martin Luther King's crowd. That was 250,000 people marching in Washington. I'm sorry, you did not have 250,000 people anywhere. I'm sorry, no. This fetish with, and it can only be described as a fetish of crowd size. It must be making up for something. It has to. You sit, you look at it, and you say, "What in the heck?" And why is he still so popular with this group? And I agree with Brooke. It is a cult, and you kind of sit back and you wonder, what in the heck has become of us? It's not only the Republican Party that is the problem. They filled a niche, and unfortunately, that niche is still pretty large. A lot larger than we expected, than we would have expected. We always said MAGA was a small contingent of the Republican Party. I'm beginning to wonder now, if that is really, really true. It's insanity. When you listen to him talk. Yesterday's that press conference is insanity. And then saying, well, she hasn't sat down with the media. The woman just started her campaign. It was kind of thrown in her lap 2.5 weeks ago. She has to pick a vice president. She's got, she's out there on the trail. Yeah, she needs to eventually sit down with the press and do some pressers. There's no doubt about it. But to say that she's afraid to do it, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And if you don't think that's not absolutely ridiculous, just look at the way that she handled the protesters that were at her one rally. I mean, you talk about a cold stare. I honestly can't see her being afraid of media, of being afraid of a reporter and saying it like it is. But, again, she's going to have to do it. There's no doubt about that. But I think that there's only so many hours in a day, and they're out there campaigning. Trump, he's going to, where's he going? Montana at the end of the week.
Yeah. Today he's in Montana. I think this is a strange choice, isn't it?
A very strange choice. Very, very strange choice. Unless he's up there for the Senate race. Because now that's a little bit closer than people think. But why is he not down in Georgia? Why is he not in Arizona? Why is he not in Nevada? More in Pennsylvania, get into Michigan, get into all those places. And he just seems to want to go to, Montana. Very nice place. Been there. Beautiful place. But why there? It's as far as electorally, it doesn't help you at all. So
but he likes the adulation. He probably got it scheduled to have one of his love fests for himself, and he's guaranteed to have a great time and bask in the glory.
If his crowd size is big enough.
Yeah, it doesn't matter anyway. I'm guessing he's going to win Montana. And so, if that's all you want is just to be adored by people, then good. Please keep going, Go up to Alaska and talk there. I'm sure they love him.
Yeah. Alaska, yeah.
Yeah, well, why stop there? Just keep going. Vladivostok, right. Siberia, Moscow.
Moscow. Go to all the places that people like you.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, the other aspect I don't understand is apparently, according to, and I don't even know if this is the guy's first name or last name, on this is MSNBC. It was on Lawrence, and I don't know. As I said, I don't know if that's his first name or last name.
Lawrence?
Yeah, Lawrence.
Lawrence O'Donnell.
No, Lawrence. It's called Stupid. It's called Stupidest Candidate. Trump did not answer reporters' questions. And let me put the link here. It was YouTube, and I was watching it. Actually, I haven't finished watching it. Where's the stupid chat? And he was pointing out that none of the networks including his own network, carried Kamala Harris's speech, but they all carried Trump's. And that Trump was standing in a way where no one could hear what the reporters were asking, and that he shared a couple of reporter questions, and they were absolutely idiotic questions. And this allowed Trump to ramble. And in the meantime, none of the networks were carrying Vice President Harris's speech. And all that MSNBC did was carry the last few minutes, and the rest of the time they were showing the Olympics. And he had criticism for all the networks, including his own, and pointed out that this is not the way to go about correcting the mistakes of 2016, where Trump got all this attention for just these rambling, incoherent answers, and then anytime he answered any question, it was untrue.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting topic for conversation. Is it so? His fans will say that Trump is very transparent. He's willing to talk to reporters and answer their questions. But the guy doesn't tell the truth about anything. And he gets up there and lies, tells one lie after another. And by the time he's done with the fourth or fifth lie, the question is long gone. And is that really transparent? He's not really answering anybody's questions.
Exactly.
He's simply going on and on and on. He's now the other half of that is, do you continue to cover such nonsense? Is there any real news value in broadcasting some guy lying all the time and without any kind of checks on it, without any kind of reality-based sort of no, Mr. President, or Mr. Ex-President, what you're saying is not true. And, then he'll just go, you're a really nasty person, which I think he did several times yesterday. Is there any value in covering this anymore? Or can we just start ignoring him and not giving him all this free media, which is what he really is the king of? He's the king of free media. He has a great way of saying a lot of nonsense that gets covered. And he doesn't, and I said this last week, he doesn't care whether he's telling the truth or not. John Bolton actually said that he doesn't even know the difference between telling the truth or not. He just says whatever he wants to say. And if you believe him, good. And if you don't believe him, he doesn't care. And he doesn't know the difference between the truth and his own distorted reality, most of which comes from things that he heard or saw or experienced long ago. And a case in point is this helicopter ride that he says he took with Willie Brown, right? Where they almost went down in a helicopter crash, and they shared that moment together. And then he said really nasty things about Kamala. And Willie Brown's like, I've never been in a helicopter with Donald Trump, or I was, and then he thought it was Jerry Brown, and Jerry Brown had been in a helicopter, but it was fine and nothing bad happened to them. Or maybe it was Governor Newsom that he was flying with over the fires, but again, nothing bad happened to that helicopter crash. And it's just like you spend all this time trying to figure out what the hell he's even talking about. And here we are 20 minutes later, I'm still rambling about Trump. I would rather just move away from it altogether and talk about, what the serious issues of the day are.
I totally agree. And that's why I say if and when he loses this election in 2024, it is up to media to stop giving him oxygen. And I think that's going to be a very, very difficult thing, because I don't care if it's CNN, Fox, or any of the rest of them. They understand that the country is a bunch of voyeurs. They want this reality TV show kind of dynamic. It's great for ratings. And doing the fact checks afterwards Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's if they listen that much. But usually they tune out after Trump gets talking. There is no value to anything that Trump says. Other than when he says he's going to do something that would be bad for the country, it's probably a good idea to believe him that he intends to do that. He would argue that the earth is flat if he thought that it would be a benefit to him. And I think people really have to understand that, but it is up to the media they're going to have to go cold turkey and say, okay, it's over with, and now let's ignore him. And I think if the Republicans are going to make that change, if they're going to reinvent themselves, that's one of the things that has to happen. He's got to stop getting the media oxygen, because even if he loses, he's still going to be out there. He's not going to go away. And that's one of the reasons I say that it's going to take probably until 2036 before elections get back to actual normal, because that dynamic is still going to be there. And hopefully somebody like a J.D. Vance or a Marjorie Space Laser Green or somebody does not take on the mantle after Trump is gone, because that would be disastrous for the Republican Party. And we've said it so many times. The country needs, in a two-party system, you need two strong, reasonable parties that counterbalance each other. This is not a counterbalance. This is arguing with the wind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's all it is. And it's like the great saying: never argue with crazy people or idiots. Well, you get both on this one. I mean, and you don't know you have no idea which one you're actually dealing with. And yeah, we should be talking about the true issues that impact the country and what they mean and ways going forward. And unfortunately, you're not really even hearing that out of Harris yet. I mean, you're getting some smatterings of policy, but I think and again, I think her team is very experienced. She's brought some new people in from the Obama team. Start talking about the things that American people really care about. Don't engage in this. If you're going to engage into it, let your vice president, let Walz do it. Let him do it, because he'll do it with a big smile. I loved when he said, or, he'd be on the couch. Oh, did you see what I just did there? I mean,
that was funny.
I mean, let him go out there and do that. And I think that is the smart strategy. And
right.
Hopefully that's exactly the way they'll go with it.
Well, I did like where I believe it was in Vice President Harris's speech where people were in the audience were saying, lock him up. And she said, no, we have the courts for that. And moved on to the next, what she wanted to talk about, rather than indulging in locking Trump up and this, that, and the other thing. So that's what the judicial system is for, and moved on. I think that was wise. And there was one person who was heckling her, and she said, if you have something to say about Trump, you can say it, otherwise I'm talking. And that shut the person up very quickly, and she moved on. And there was none of this, this person should be beaten up and thrown out, beat him up and throw him out of here and take him out on a stretcher, and all this stuff that Trump was doing back in whatever it was, 2015, 2016, that I certainly found extremely alarming at the time, all this violent language. What happens? Go ahead, Mark.
No. What I was going to say is that response, that's right out of the Obama playbook. Okay. So many times President Obama would get, a heckler, and, people would be, booing this, and he'd always, no. Everybody gets to have their say. And he would, that kind of de-escalation.
Yeah.
As opposed to, again, as you say, Trump's tactic of, back in the good old days, we would have knocked him out and send the body to New Jersey or someplace. So, yeah.
Yep. What happens, do you think? I mean, do you feel that it is possible for the country to move away from this polarization at some point, or do you feel that the country is going to remain divided? I mean, for some decades to come.
So, it's probably worth looking at what happens after LBJ beat, Mark, help me out here, the senator from Arizona, Barry Goldwater.
Barry Goldwater, yeah.
And what they did after that. Because I think that was their ideology had gone too far, right? And right after that, I believe, if I have my timing correct, William F. Buckley threw the John Birch Society out of the conservative movement. The Powell memo was launched, which sort of laid out the plan to create right-wing think tanks and be able to respond to situations in a more serious way, I think, than they felt that Goldwater was able to deal with things, questions of the day. There were a couple of moves that seemed to reset the party, right? And they ended up with Nixon, and they ended up with a Democratic Party that had fallen apart because the heir apparent RFK was assassinated, and Richard Nixon, of course, made a deal to keep the Vietnam War going, denying Hubert Humphrey the October surprise that that Nixon was terrified of Hubert Humphrey getting, and the dirty tricks of Nixon were back, sort of in full view, and but they did do this sort of reset where they tried to change the Republican Party from the Goldwater, John Birch Society party to something a little bit more moderate. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Abbie Hoffman supported Richard Nixon in 1968 because he felt that LBJ and Hubert Humphrey would keep the war going, and that Nixon had a better chance of ending the Vietnam War with Nixon than anybody else. Of course, he was disillusioned by it, as facts rolled out, and as Nixon continued the war and refused to end it and even escalated it.
So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsors for this episode. BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert and cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, and Podkite, who does all of our analytics. iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source for music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms. We'd like to thank all of our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.